things, but there is the possibility of the first few turns things being in question whether or not he can play his cards on time.
So both players keep 7. Ryan, our junk mid-range player, our second overall seed, he's going to start off with the Temple of Silence.
Josh, meanwhile, without the Thoughtseize opening.
You have to imagine that if Ryan is able to take game 1 here, he's a pretty substantial favorite to win the match.
Oh yeah, I mean, the game 1's supposed to be the hard one. You know, like he sideboards, you know, most of his sideboard in this matchup. So if he actually can take game 1, that's big.
So a Thoughtseize off the top here for Josh. Reveals a hand of Sylvan Caryatid, Abrupt Decay, Courser of Crufix, and 2 copies of Hero's Downfall.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan, not a real ton going on, but at least he's got some defense to make sure that, you know, things don't, you know, he's got time to draw into some of his threats.
So what do you think? Is this a decision between Abrupt Decay and Courser, depending on if Josh has an Underworld Connections in hand?
Well, if he has the Underworld Connections, he would for sure want to take the Abrupt Decay. Courser of Crufix, definitely a potential threat. I mean, Josh might have an answer to it anyway. The Hero's Downfalls are kind of non-issues, most likely, unless Josh has a pretty bizarre hand. The Sylvan Caryatid's also an option, just because Gerhart is short on mana. The real risk of if you leave the Crufix, even if he has, you know, even if he has a removal spell, Gerhart might draw an extra card off of it.
Mm-hmm. So it decides on the Abrupt Decay.
Now, he had considered letting him keep the Abrupt Decay because he has 2 Underworld Connections in hand, but in the end decides, no, you know what, why chance it? He could have more Abrupt Decays.
So Courser the play for Ryan, reveals a Swamp.
This is that play we were talking about. This extra mana is super important.
Reveals a Forest, and no other plays from Ryan.
It is funny, even with, you know, having having 5 mana like this, still doesn't have enough mana to cast all his spells. Both Archangel of Thune and Obsidian still out of reach.
Yeah, this deck goes all the way up.
Yep.
Third Swamp from Joshua.
Likely to see a removal spell in Courser of Crufix. The question is which one.
And debating between that, maybe deploying Connections this turn, maybe just Thoughtseizing, but I would err on the side of just killing the Courser. And there it is.
So what do you think of killing the Courser now instead of waiting and seeing what Ryan draws? They get to see each other's decks beforehand, so he knows there's nothing tricky like a Golgari Charm or something.
The free card could just be too punishing, potentially.
Well, you do it inside the draw step.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, you just get the information. I think it's free here.
It's a little, a little preemptive. So there's a Caryatid and a Scavenging Ooze.
Now, does Josh have a 4th mana?
I believe he has Mutavault in hand.
Well, that's good. So Underworld Connections is definitely a very live option here. Lifebane Zombie also an option, because he knows that Gerhart did not have access to double white.
Well, at this point, Ryan's down to 2 cards in hand, so I'm pretty sure Josh is still aware that those are the 2 copies of Hero's Downfall he saw from the earlier Thoughtseize.
Very, very good point. Underworld Connections it is.
There it is. He's going to give up a turn here of getting hit to try to get his Connections online.
If there's one thing I have learned, it's that having Underworld Connections is where it's at.
Certainly when your light total isn't under that much pressure, it makes everything a lot easier.
Yeah, plus you just get stuff done that way.
Ooh. I believe that was Elspeth off the top there for Ryan. Talk about shifting the game around.
Absolutely. We're talking best possible draw type of time. Particularly since Bauer just used that Hero's Downfall on a Courser of Crufix.
So Ooze comes across for 3. And here is the Planeswalker.
Gotta ooze it or lose it. Elspeth makes some friends.
Things were looking really good for Josh, but this game just shifted in a big way.
And you can always draw a pretty sweet card.
Now Josh does have Bioblade in hand, so if he's able to find Bioblade plus a Hero's Downfall, he might be able to maneuver his way out of this.
Right, I mean, he is drawing 2 cards a turn, so he's got some stuff going for him. He also can potentially race, right? I mean, that Great Merchant is a start. It's not like the tokens are attacking him that fast.
It's pretty tough to race against when you know your opponent has 2 copies of Hero's Downfall. Josh
Oh,
probably has to just play a more defensive game from this spot.
Yeah, particularly since he wants to, I mean, he really does want to draw some extra cards off of the connections here.
So there's Bio Blight on the Scavenging Ooze. Take an opportunity to kill that while the getting's good.
Makes sense. Another Gray Merchant.
I mean, there's a plan developing.
I'm telling you, he's got this Mutavault for defense. He's got a couple of Thoughtseizes if he ever actually wants to go after the Hero's Downfalls. So he decides to go ahead and take one. I think this is a little bold. I mean, the prospect of blocking prevents so much damage.
Yeah.
His life total is not, you know, like, he needs that for the connections.
Maybe he just assumes that the Gray Merchants are going to be able to catch him up.
This is a pretty sweet match. Eventually, though, he's going to need a plan to not die to Elspeth's ultimate. I mean, obviously, Bile Blight goes a long way, but, I mean, eventually, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah. Especially if Ryan is conservative about using the ultimate.
Yeah.
So there's another plus from Elspeth.
Yeah, having the extra token dead, you know. It's going to be a tight one.
Pack-Rat the draw for Josh.
A little slow in the spot. Rats. Is he just going to have to keep connecting?
I mean, if he connects here, he almost has to find a land to Gray Merchant.
There's still Bile Blight, too. Yeah, I think he's, like, I don't think he can afford to just give up the connections, but Gray Merchant would be nice.
Yeah, it's possible that he has to just play this game to fend off for as long as possible on the assumption that he's going to draw Hero's Downfall to get out from under this Elspeth.
Yep.
But he is in a tough spot.
If he uses this Bile Blight, he's got no more in his deck. This is it. Just plays the Pack-Rat. Now this is representing 2 blockers, but it's a little bit late for all that. Hero's Downfall still an option.
Yeah, Ryan is you know, both players are again aware of the Hero's Downfall still lingering in Ryan's hand.
Yep, Josh not wanting to try to use the Mutavault as a blocker earlier for potential need of mana, because he doesn't want to expose it to the Hero's Downfall, but at this point he's running out of options for all that.
All right, here comes the team. All 6 Elspeth tokens coming in. Josh is going to go ahead and make a rat. Discards the Thoughtseize.
Do you let him block?
It seems that if Josh is going to double block, and you're going to use your Hero's Downfall for sure, you might as well Hero's Downfall before blocks.
Yep. Because if your Hero's Downfall before blocks actually talks him out of blocking,
Yeah.
then it wasn't necessarily right for him to be blocking in the first place.
And you knock him to 1, which means that he can't untap and use Underworld Connections.
Yep.
It looks like Ryan's drawing the same conclusion here. Going to go ahead and Hero's Downfall the Pack-Rat.
This one's a tough one. He does take it, going to 1. He is going to miss a turn of connections this way. So I kind of feel like you have to just give up the Pack-Rat.
Yeah, there's no...
You need every chance to get Hero's Downfall because this is the turn.
Yeah, Josh can't even untap and cast Gray Merchant this turn, so... Well, now if he draws a land, he can. So he can set up Gray
He has
Merchant
a land.
plus Violet. He was able to draw a land this turn, so we can set that up at least.
The problem, of course, that means that Ryan is going to get to keep his Elspeth.
There's Bioblight. There goes all the tokens.
And we do see Great Merchant.
It's a drain for 5. Great Merchant, the Pack Rat token, and the Underworld connections.
Something, you know.
With another Great Merchant in hand and connections.
The problem is he has 0 more Bioblights in his 75 or in his 60, meaning he is he's going to have to do this one the hard way. At this point, we are racing.
And there's a Thoughtseize off the top for Ryan. That gets rid of the Great Merchant. Josh seemed like he was trying to sculpt the game to get to this point, and now that's a huge problem.
And what is Elspeth at 8?
It is now at 8.
I mean, that's lethal. That is lethal on board.
Josh can still find Hero's Downfall.
Yeah, he is facing looming doom.
Draws with the connections.
Devastating. The Thoughtseize the Great Merchant bought him took 1 turn off, you know, sped the clock up by a full turn.
This is really important when your opponent's drawing 2 cards a turn.
Now, by attacking with 3 creatures, he does force Ryan to block at least to block with at least 1 Elspeth token, which means that if Josh has a single removal spell, he can live through the turn. Which, even if he doesn't have a removal spell, he can represent the removal spell to see if Ryan is willing to cash in the Elspeth. You know, are you willing to go all in with just 2 tokens? Because that would be a risky play on Ryan's part. A single removal spell, and suddenly, you know, you're down to just 1 3/3.
Yeah. Well, if that's the case, then how do you feel about chump blocking in the first place? Maybe you just let the one thing to come, you allow the Pack Rat to come through and just put your Sylvan Caryatids in front of the 2-power attackers.
That's a good point.
Ryan doesn't have to force himself down that road. He can just set this all up for next turn. It is very risky for him to make a move right now.
Yeah, this is where he's doing the check. He's like, okay, let's figure this out. How many cards could you have? This is where you just got to open up a man's soul and take a look at it. See what he's working with.
Can't be Devour Flesh.
Nope. And he has no more Bioblights, which he knows his deck list.
And it would be incredibly gutsy for Josh to draw Hero's Downfall and not cast it on the Elspeth.
Right, and this is game 1, so there are no Doomblades. I mean, there isn't actually any card that makes sense here, right?
Well, unless Josh is trapping him.
So Josh could Devour Flesh himself.
Also true.
That's 4 life right there. That's a whole thing. That's a short-term fix, but that does mean there's only 2 creatures to have to deal with.
Will Ryan pull the trigger here?
That would be pretty unreal to have the Hero's Downfall.
Yeah, that is a trappy play right there.
That is, I mean, he does make a Pack Rat, and because he did not make the emblem, he's throwing away one of his tokens.
Yep. But I think he's happy to just test the waters here. He can plus Elspeth again. Go for it next turn.
Yep. Josh has got 2 draws left. He bought himself a small amount of time, but this is it. Could have won right there. Did not want to chance it.
It's a risky play. I mean, it's a low percentage chance that Josh has something there. The evidence just doesn't add up, you know? But when you're in that seat, it's still very tough to pull the trigger.
And, I mean, he's a big favorite now, so it's not actually even clear if it was worth taking any risk at all.
Yeah. Although giving Josh rather more draw steps to find another Grey Merchant is potentially disaster.
Yeah,
because it's not just a removal spell now.
Yeah, because I mean at this point, all the rats and I mean this is becoming a problem. Like Ryan can't really do much beyond this Elspeth.
And it does call into question, you know, if you were unwilling to go ultimate the previous turn, if Josh just passed, then why make an effort to protect Elspeth from the attack the previous turn to preserve the ultimate? If you weren't willing to use it.
I think he was hoping to draw a Duress or a Thoughtseize.
Sure.
I guess just Thoughtseize game 1. This one is intense. Looks like we are getting the emblem. This is it. Is this a showdown?
Yep.
They go to game 2.
Ryan tested the waters the first turn, saw that the waters were clear, didn't buy that Josh found something of significance in the interim, and
well, at this point, it didn't matter either. Josh, because of the connections, had dropped to 3. Now both tokens were lethal.
oh sure. I mean, Devour Flesh can still muck things up potentially. So
Yeah, but I try not to think about the possible scenarios involving, losing.
right.
Focus positive.
Welcome back to the booth. Patrick Sullivan, Patrick Chapin, StarCityGames.com, Center Open here in Detroit. It is trivia time. Do you have a question ready?
Nope, I'll take care of the ones tomorrow. No, you know what? I got a trivia question for you.
All right, first of all, the rules. I'm going to give it to you. Patrick over here is going to ask you a question pertaining to the match or something else potentially. You're going to tweet the answer to that at SCG Live, hashtag SCG Premium. The winner will be drawn at random among the correct answers for 3 free months of Star City Games Premium content. It is about accuracy and not speed, so don't worry about being the first person to respond, just respond accurately. Also keep in mind that this giveaway is solely at the discretion of StarCityGames.com. Twitch.tv is in no way affiliated with this giveaway.
Yeah, that's what our lawyers say.
Yeah.
So the question is, for 3 months of SCG Premium, who is the first player from Michigan to win a Pro Tour, and why is it Mark Herberholz? Tweet at us at, you don't actually even need the why either. Just if you can tweet at us, and man, I hope that's actually right too. Otherwise, you know what? Let me give it that. Yeah, it's too late now, right? Like that's the trivia question.
Is that a trivia question?
Spell his name correctly, and you can win 3 months of SCG Premium if you get drawn. If you use Google or something like that, you're only cheating yourself.
This is Pro Tour Honolulu.
Oh, you're gonna give it away?
Well, they have to find his name now, and it's not intuitive spelling. Spell Mark Herberholz's name correctly. Tweet your answer at SCG Live, hashtag SCG Premium. The winner will receive 3 free months of Star City Games Premium. Again, remember, this is just Star City Games doing this, in no way affiliated with Twitch.tv.
One of the 10 greatest deck builders of all time as picked by his peers, as you can read about in Next Level Deck Building. Just incidentally, in case that helps you. Actually, yeah, anybody who happens to have a copy of Next Level Deck Building can just, flip to the best deck builders of all time section. Find a little spoiler right there. It might be 3 months of free premium that way.
Available for sale right now on StarCityGames.com.
If you hurry, they might just ship it to you in time to win the trivia contest here.
All right, so again,
I doubt it. It's
back
possible.
to the match. We're going to be looking at sideboards over here momentarily.
I tried to warn you, man.
Joshua Bauer on your left-hand side. He's playing Mono Blight Devotion, 2 Lifebane Zombies, a Bile Blight, 2 Dark Betrayals, 2 Doom Blades, 2 Freaky Skewers, 3 Erebos, God of the Dead, 3 Duress. We've talked a lot about Lifebane Zombie, the best card that Mono Blight Devotion has access to in the sideboard for this matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talked about also just that Gerhart's game 1 was the rocky one. That he won the first game, I mean, that's a real big plus for him, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's because he's gaining a lot after sideboard.
We look over at his sideboard, 3 Mistcutter Hydras, 2 Sin Collectors, 4 Underworld Connections, a Dark Betrayal, 2 Doom Blades, a Golgari Charm, and 2 copies of Duress. There's a lot to like here. Duress is, of course, great at answering Joshua's plethora of spells, especially Underworld Connections. He can bring in his own 4 copies of Underworld Connections to try to play a card advantage game. A Dark Betrayal, of course, great against Mono Black Devotion. 2 copies of Sin Collector, another anti-spell card, and a Golgari Charm gives him a way to potentially regenerate his own creatures, or most notably, blow up one of Joshua's Underworld Connections.
And you know what? Honestly, it's not even clear to me that Gerhart isn't going to just, want to get funky with it. I mean, this is the type of spot where you might be like, you know what? I bet he will never expect me to board in Mistcutter Hydra against his Lifebane Zombies.
Well,
he's probably not going to expect that, but that could be that could be the victory right there.
The problem is that even if Joshua doesn't expect it right now, he has many effects that allow him to look at Ryan's hand.
Oh, it doesn't.
He'll eventually be able to anticipate it's coming 8 of
Which
those
is why
12
he
of-
will definitely not expect you to board that in.
Yes, it is definitely the path less traveled.
Yeah. The thing is, though, I really don't think that it's that great to board out Courser of Crufix for a Mistcutter Hydra or something. You gotta stick with the creatures that can generate some real advantage if you're gonna risk having something be Lifebane zombied at all.
Yeah, you have to assume, does the creature have any sort of productivity if it's in play for 1 turn? Courser of Crufix passes that test. Palikrandos and Archangel of Thum less so.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing Ryan does is board out, most, if not all, of his Obsidat, Archangel, Palikrandos type of time. Scavenging Ooze and Sylvan Carrion can duck under the Lifebane zombie enough of the time, and Courser does whenever Gerhart is on the play, but even when he's on the draw, it is a creature that generates some advantage when it comes into play in the event that it doesn't get Lifebane zombied.
You don't think there's an argument, Ryan has a lot of discard that he's bringing in. Do you think he might be able to clear a path for Obsidat? That card's so high impact. Of course, there's the risk of Lifebane zombie,
Yeah.
but, with enough discard spells, he might be able to clear an opening for that.
I mean, why is Obsidat any stronger than any of the other ones, though? Like, every spell that kills, I guess what, because of Doomblade?
That's part of it. It's also just high impact. It doesn't give Joshua a lot of time to find an answer, as opposed to something like Courser, or Palikrandos, which is just a much slower clock.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the nice thing about Obsidat is at least it works real well with Whip of Erebos.
Yeah, that is a combo. That's a combination of cards
But
right there.
I wouldn't be surprised if he actually has to take the Whip of Erebos out, just because he doesn't even have that many creatures in the first place, and Lifebane Zombie messes up the creature plan so hard. Plus, he probably wants to board some out. We'll see. I think he's going to end up, putting a little bit more on the back of Advent of the Worm, Elspeth, Vraska, but he does need to actually close out the game. Maybe Mistcutter Hydra,
Just let him know who's boss.
Well, so the thing is that most of the time Bauer's going to be at 20 or less life. I mean, obviously, the Grey Merchant can change that, but with 25 land in his deck, Gerhart can very easily make a Mistcutter Hydra big enough to kill in 1 hit, and that doesn't even count things like Sylvan Carroted.
That's a lot of damage.
Yeah.
In this hypothetical, that's just a lot of damage.
Yeah.
And even if Joshua has Devour Flesh in that spot, you gain so much life that's pretty good too.
With Sin Collector, Duress, and Thoughtseize to help clear the way, I think that I think Gerhart's got real good chances. I wouldn't give him an infinite edge, but I think he's a small favorite each game, and being up a game, he's a solid favorite.
Yeah. Getting that first game so critical.
On the other side, Josh has nothing too fancy, nothing too crazy. I mean, obviously he's got Lifebane Zombie number 3 and 4, as we'd come to expect. He's got a couple of Doomblades, which it's kind of a gamble. You're playing this chess match. How many of the creatures are going to get taken out? Do you even bring in the Doomblades? Mm-hmm. But then what I wonder about is Erebos, God of the Dead. Is this an Erebos type of matchup because you just are on all attrition?
Especially since if Ryan is sideboarding the way that you anticipate, he's slowing his deck down a lot. He's taking a lot of his threats to become this Underworld Connections removal and discard deck. So in that kind of matchup, Erebos makes a lot of sense.
And then finally, Duress. I mean, I assume you want Duress. There's so many great spells to hit. Underworld Connections, Advent of the Worm.
The Planeswalkers are so good.
The Planeswalkers, Hero's Downfall, possibly Thoughtseize, since you're on the play now.
Yeah, Ryan's over here taking a mulligan. Yeah, I think the discard spells make a lot of sense. I mean, both decks are kind of becoming the same thing. They're trying to just become these card advantage discard decks post-board.
Yeah. The only thing that doesn't make sense is one Golgari Guildgate. We keep getting haunted by this. Every good deck we see has one Golgari Guildgate.
Do you think it's some sort of secret club?
Yeah.
Or just some secret handshake?
Dude, this is some straight up Illuminati type of time here. This is like how they send signals to each other. Yeah. It's like, I don't know. I think Joshua Bauer doesn't even realize the forces he's up against with Ryan Gerhart's junk deck.
If he wins this match, he might not even be able to successfully get out to the parking lot, There could just be the Guildgate people waiting for him.
Yeah. I think Jeff is mostly just going to be out back ready to show him the power of Golgari Guildgate. So Ryan in the tank, looks like he's going to draw his 6, and what's he looking for besides just the usual combination of discard and Underworld Connections?
That's about it. I mean, Mana Acceleration to Elspeth's not a bad path either, but that gets broken up pretty easily by the Duresses and Thoughtseizes that Joshua has access to.
We have a begrudging keep. Josh starts it off and starts it off right with a Thoughtseize.
Pretty potent hand here. 3 lands, a Bile Blight, Abrupt Decay, Underworld Connections.
Yep, but not surprisingly, Thoughtseize once again taking the best card out of somebody's hand.
And allowing the other player to play the game with a ton of information.
Yep, with a very fair price of 2 life attached to it.
Many of Magic's worst mistakes are the designs that have life loss as an arbitrary cost tacked on.
Some of the obvious ones, like Force of Will, Necropotence.
Fetch lands.
Fetch lands, absolutely. So I don't think it's fair to call those the worst, though. I mean, you have to remember, Bridge from Below
Oh, yeah.
is a Magic card.
Right. Well,
Sort of. Technically.
It's technically a Magic card.
Technically. Arcbound Ravager, I would
That's
argue.
a much different camp.
I think it's a much worse mistake.
There are mistakes in different ways.
So, Abrupt Decay taken from the turn 2 Duress, leaving Gerhart with just some creature removal.
So Joshua doing a very good job of setting up a path here for Underworld Connections.
Or Erebos.
Yeah, one of those 2 cards to take the game over.
Gerhart, not really a ton he can do at the moment besides just play some land, hang out, and chill.
He's got to wait for something good to do, you know? His own connections, ideally.
Yeah, absolutely. Scavenging Ooze comes down.
Okay.
Gerhart wisely playing his second black so the next turn he can play a tap Temple Garden and still represent Bile Blight.
He's at least got a little something going now, and Joshua does have the connections. So it was really important this turn for Ryan to have some pressure.
Looks like Hero's Downfall enchanting Swamp.
Good thing the Hero's Downfall doesn't say creature or land, or that could have been an ugly judge call right there. It's also good that it doesn't say creature or land, probably for other reasons.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why the 3-mana instant Vindicate is not really a thing. Scavenging Ooze gets in there. The business in the deli, as Jerry Thompson would say.
I didn't know that was an expression.
Absolutely. I mean, sometimes you give them the business.
Mm-hmm.
Other times you give them the deli.
Okay.
It's nothing. It's mostly just businesses and delis in this league, but it's always one or the other. Sometimes you give them both.
Do you ever give them neither?
Well, when you give up,
Sure.
but we don't give up.
There's a downfall on the Scavenging Ooze. Joshua passes with Underworld Connection still at the ready.
And it looks like we do have an update. Simon Stahl playing blue-white control, as expected, comes out ahead against mono blue Devotion.
Yeah, Jake Strzelski quickly dismissed 2-0. Not a big surprise there. Tough matchup for Blue Devotion.
Absolutely.
Laura, on the other side of the bracket, our backup feature match, Laura Nolan and Eric Mayday, they are in game 3. The Black Devotion Mirror.
Yeah, this time it looks like it's 1-1 going into the third game.
Yep. Could be 1-0-1.
Sure.
That's a thing.
That's the thing. So Josh has been continuing to keep the threats off the table. Now that he has Underworld Connections going, I mean, this is slipping away really fast, right?
Yeah, Ryan can defend himself for a while here, but the problem is that Joshua is just happy to run him out of cards. Doesn't really even matter what the text on the cards is, and take over the game with the connections. Here's an Advent at the end of the turn. That's a valuable draw for Ryan as well.
Yeah, he does need to draw us an answer to the demon, though. Oh, he does have the Hero's Downfall we know about from earlier. So this is actually, not the worst. At least he's putting some serious pressure on Joshua's life total.
He's at least directing the game in a place where Elspeth off the top really matters. That's all you can really ask for, given that he mulliganed.
Yeah, that's what he did last game.
Yep. He mulliganed, and, Joshua's had a great start here, but Ryan's at least playing the game to a position where he has big draws.
Absolutely. This is not the hardest position for Josh to get out of. I mean, he's already got plenty of answers, but what he needs to do is conserve that life total a little bit. He can't just be throwing stuff away recklessly. Do you think it's possible that Demon was a little hasty?
No, I think that was a fine play that turn.
You can't just assume he drew Advent of the Worm
Correct.
every turn.
if Joshua plays around advent every single turn, that's going to seriously contort his play. And it's not even game over if Ryan has it there. It's just a little bit bad.
A little bit punishment.
Yeah. Takes one on the jaw.
Read the bones, a nice solid draw here.
So I'm trying to catch up a little bit in the card advantage fight.
A very little bit, but some.
So Ryan just trying to figure out how he wants to tap his mana here.
What else is he looking for besides Elspeth? I mean, obviously Elspeth would be exciting. What
Abrupt
else
Decay would be an excellent draw.
Absolutely, get him out, or Golgari Charm.
Yeah,
Anything to
just-
get him out of this Underworld Connection situation.
Yeah, once Joshua has to fight fair, the game's very different.
Looks like a land and a Thoughtseize, neither of which are Abrupt Decay or Golgari Charm.
Yeah, Ryan is just digging for an answer to this connections. Or an Elspeth, that's what he's looking for.
Vraska wouldn't be bad.
Nope, Frasco would not be shabby. And on the other side of the bracket, our backup feature match, former Invitational champion Lauren Nolan. He wins 2-1. He will be advancing to the semifinals.
Told you, he's on a tear. That's what the trivia question should have been.
Who's on a tear?
Who's going to win this tournament?
But then we had to wait until the tournament's over to give out the trivia contest winner, and that sort of delay it's not good for coverage for a couple of reasons.
Yeah, if you want to, wait until the real world catches up. No, who knows? Like obviously there's a lot of universes, a lot of possibilities.
And if someone can see in the future, then that's just an enormous edge.
Definitely. Or if they know to believe people who can.
Right. Desecration Demon here for Joshua. That's going to be met very quickly with a Dark Betrayal.
Gerhart's been doing a fantastic job of staying in this one for a guy who's dealing with who's facing an opponent drawing literally twice as many cards as him.
And Vraska off the top, this is one of the cards you mentioned.
Absolutely, with no creatures in play, so that Vraska has the potential to continue to tick back up. It's not even clear to me this isn't better than Elspeth.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, this is a big, big, big play. Very, very powerful. Josh, one more for the road.
And now the fact that his life total is in some danger here. Again, Ryan with no board, but there's a lot of big draws he has access to. Now Advents, Elspeth, all very dangerous draws.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And if he doesn't get something going, I mean, at some point, 3/1/1 snakes, with some text, that's a pretty threatening.
Some text? They win the game. They
Only
literally
when they bite you.
They literally win the game. It always bothered me that Vraska's tokens didn't have Death Touch.
I know. They seem like they would have Death Touch.
They're assassins, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what an assassin does. It kills things it gets into contact with.
Yeah. I mean, Phage had Death Touch. I feel like the assassin should too, but maybe there just wasn't enough room on the Vraska.
It is a mouthful.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Erebos deployed.
Erebos sort of serving as a backup connections. The problem being, of course, Josh has got tops 2 cards until he starts Gray Merchanting.
Yep. Perhaps trying to threaten turning Erebos into a creature next turn.
This looks like one of those goofy, weird Necro games where they're like Necroing for 8, Necroing for 7, and they end up discarding a bunch of cards because they just were desperate early because they missed some land drops, and now their life total is completely gone. They blew up their Necro with Disc, but they're just at a super low life total.
Yeah. Or they just use connections for those of you who don't know the 1994 references all that well. Sorry, 96. It's more of a 96 thing.
Necropotence? Necropotence was more like a 1995 thing, a 1996 thing, a 1997 thing, a 1998 thing. And if you were into like modern, I mean, Necropotence carried on for quite a few more years after that.
Yep. So.
Right now, Necropotence is busy being one of the 5 best cards in Magic in a format that doesn't see as much play on camera. Vintage.
So Ryan, with his own connections, uses it to draw a card and finds a Sylvan Caryatid, which he can cast.
So he does have Hero's Downfall, so at least he can get out from under the Vraska.
But his life total is becoming dangerously low.
Yeah, there's not a ton more to it beyond deciding at what point do you have to just suck it up and play your Grey Merchant.
Yep.
So there's a Night Veil Spectre, which is going to make the Grey Merchant next turn much more effective. Do we see a Hero's Downfall in Nebraska? We do. He was tempted to play out the Lifebane Zombie just to, get the Erebos beats in there. But
I think you got to get Vraska off the board.
yeah.
Temple off the top.
So now choosing what do you think about the, okay, yeah, he's got the connections anyway.
There's a swamp.
Things are going real well for Josh. I mean, obviously he's got a low enough life total that, things could get crazy. Like imagine if Gerhart had an advent of the worm here. Things could get crazy in a hurry, but I think next turn Josh is gonna be sealing the deal with the Great Merchant.
It's going to be a big one.
Let's see if there's anything that can tempt him to do otherwise, or potentially sweeten the pot.
Well, the big thing is it also turns on Erebos, so there's a ton of upside here. And
yeah, Erebos is into the wild Gray Merchant type of stuff.
here's
This
a Gray
is
Merchant.
for 6. And it's not trivial how low he's got Ryan down to.
No, not at all.
With Erebos getting in there, I mean, the Sylvan Caryatid probably has to block here, but you got to make sure that you're maximizing your outs.
So there's a chump block here. Nightveil Spectre is going to trigger. Finds a Thoughtseize. Ryan's got to be pretty happy with that. Not drawing that next turn.
Definitely. What all are we looking for? Elspeth, obviously, as always. Anything else? I mean, the Read the Bones is gone. Vraska's gone. Does Advent even help him?
Not really,
It's
no.
too late for all that, right?
He's facing down lethal next turn from this attack, so I think we're looking at Elspeth or bust.
I think I've narrowed it down to, I guess there's still connections. And he wisely scries first.
One more
Real
shot
solid,
at it.
real good, tight technical play by Ryan Gerhart this whole tournament.
There's another connections.
The problem is at this point you've run out of mana,
Yeah, you cannot spin your wheels one more turn this way.
which will take us to a third and deciding game. Well played on Josh Bauer's part. And this is just, he's been real patient with the Gray Merchant, waited to get enough value to make sure that.
And Ryan did a great job of battling back. I mean, he looked done for early on.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's good to see the top 8 of the tournament have such good matches. And this is far from over. I mean, the match still has one more game to go.
Yeah. Ryan trying to figure something out. If we saw his hand correctly, then it's a connections. His only hope is to find Abrupt Decay the Nightveil Spectre, and hope that Josh has no way to reassemble Devotion. But we know there's a Desecration Demon in hand, so it's elementary at that point.
Yep,
2 lands.
packs it in.
There you go. On to game 3.
On to the next one. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yep. That game was pretty sweet. Pretty back and forth.
Yeah. I mean, like there's no two ways about it. Ryan Gerhart was battling it out.
Yeah.
He was for a guy that was under connections for so long. He was making a real serious game of it.
And you got to be a little bit uncomfortable now if you're in Joshua's seat, where that opening, opponent mulligans, you play discard spell on turn 1, discard spell on turn 2, connections on turn 3. Opponent has nothing going on, and it's still a struggle. I mean, that's about as good of an opening as you can really ask for, and Ryan was able to turn that into a game.
Yeah. What I'm hoping is that we see 4 Mutavaults out of Josh Bauer, just the classic 4 Mutavault draw. Versus the all scavenging ooze beatdown draw, so that we just see like tons and tons of 2/2s.
It's unlikely. It's pretty unlikely.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of what would make it,
Well, and eventually one of the oozes dies, and then one of the oozes becomes a 3/3. So
that's
the symmetry is broken up.
Oh, I know.
There's a lot of metagaming that goes on here.
Yeah. So what's interesting is that Nightveil Spectre and Lifebane Zombie, both in the deck, means that there's a higher total creature count than there used to be. Where did he get the room? I mean, where is he? Like, he's boarding in Lifebane Zombie and got Erebos, God of the Dead, and Duress, and, what's he cutting to make room for this? The Devour Fleshes?
Bioblights.
Bioblight? Sure.
Not a lot of good targets in Ryan's deck. But besides that, it's hard to know. I mean, maybe there was a little bit of shaving that went on. I can see not wanting to be that heavy on Pack Rat. I can see not wanting to be that heavy on Desecration Demon.
Here's what I'm saying. Once you board out the Devour Flesh and the Bioblight, and if you don't board in the Doomblade because you're like, oh, he's boarding out all his creatures, Mistcutter Hydra.
Just go for it.
Think of how sick Mistcutter Hydra would have been that game if he drew it at the exact right time.
It might have been fine. I mean, we can go back. There's probably some turns where it would have mattered.
Oh my God, no, for sure. If he would have drawn a Mistcutter Hydra instead of a land,
Right.
that would have been way better.
Right, exactly. Or if he drew an Elspeth instead of a land.
Yeah, but he's already got 2 of those. You can't board any more in.
Right, yeah.
I mean, he would, you know. That's why you got to board land out most of the time.
Because you need, I mean, post-board, you're bringing in spells. Presumably those spells are better than the ones that you have in your main deck. How do you make room for them? It's just the lands that have to go.
Now, a lot of people don't do this. I'm pretty sure Gerhart does, but not a lot of people do. You know, not a lot of people do this. But you could board up to like 62, 63. Just go a little heavy.
Yeah,
It's legal.
they changed that rule. You
Absolutely.
can go for it.
Absolutely.
Go
It's
upstairs.
Yeah, it's like I think they changed that rule for Sam Black, kind of the opposite way that they changed the 3-second rule for Wilt Chamberlain or goaltending. like they had to contain Wilt Chamberlain,
Right.
and they had to do something vaguely related to that with Sam
Unleash. They had to unleash Sam Black.
Black. Absolutely, Sam Black. For those not familiar with the reference, Sam Black, notorious for the 54 card draft decks in Grand Prix top 8s, or in Grand Prix, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you got to play a lot.
Up cards.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, he was playing. I think it was an Innistrad block, and he's like, "Yeah, I've just got 3 Gnaw to the Bones, and I just want to gnaw all the way down. I just want gnaws all the way down." He had so much self mill and so many Gnaw to the Bones that he's like, "You know what? I'm just gonna play, you know." It's pretty glorious. You don't. Not everybody has that in their range.
Ryan Gerhart keeping 7.
Josh Bauer is taking a turn, unfortunately, in the 3rd and decisive game.
Shakes his head at the heavens. What a time.
Yeah, this is where you start thinking about Deicide.
Yep.
But he's got good cheer, good spirits about it.
And his opponent mulliganed last game, so
It's only fair.
it's only fair.
It looks
Alright.
like we do have a result on the other side of the bracket.
Green Red Monsters, Jorge Lopez defeats Mitch Collins 2-0.
Wow.
He will be advancing to the semifinals where he will face Lauren Nolan,
Aggressive.
who has been, as you mentioned, on a tear.
Yeah, he's basically the juggernaut, which is to say that nobody can stop him. He's like the Nate Heiss of this weekend. Nate Heiss, a magic juggernaut of his own. He was one of the 2 most famous magic juggernauts for being a juggernaut back in the day. Nate Heiss, a former Team CMU player and Hall of Famer Mike Turian's cousin.
We called him the charging slate back, the heist back, because he would splash charging slate back into many of his draft decks.
Yeah, he plays one way. I mean,
Temple, plenty to start off the action for Ryan.
yeah, and plenty of action it is. Temple of Deceit. He likes what he sees.
There's a Scavenging Ooze off the top for Ryan.
And it's clear he does have the Obsidian.
I think it's too high impact to get away from, especially when you have so many discard spells.
The life gain is not trivial either, and the extra damage. Because, I mean, as we saw, Josh's life total ends up in jeopardy pretty quickly.
Yeah. Especially when you have Advent in your deck, you know, that's a big 5-shot you can usually set up at some point.
And if he boards out Devour Flesh, I mean, next thing you know, about a bing, about a boom.
Yeah. I don't think you can side out Devour Flesh. Nothing else you want to be stopping Carriage draws. Bioblights I can see hitting the bench. They don't do very much.
Fair.
Just a 3rd land and no other action here.
It is a connections.
Does Ryan have one of his answers? It appears the answer is no.
The Scavenging Ooze beatdown continues.
So a Temple. Curious to see, there is an Ooze in Ryan's hand right now.
Will he play into the possibility of a Bioblade?
Does he respect the possibility that's still in Joshua's deck?
Scavenging Ooze gets in there. He does decide to keep the Abrupt Decay on top.
I like it.
Josh Bauer continuing to just kind of develop his board. You know, the first few turns, like he's drawing extra cards, but he doesn't really have enough mana to really put his deck into high gear yet.
There's a Desecration Demon. And this is going to open up a big window here.
Absolutely, and not getting that one last card before it gets Abrupt Decayed.
Well, if he's lucky, it'll just be Abrupt Decay. We could be looking at Obsidian this turn.
Yeah, which is an extra 4 because this is a window where you get to, you know, for sure do it and phase it out.
Yep.
That's pretty good.
With Devour Flesh Insurance, I mean, this is a great spot. When your opponent has 4 Lifebane zombies in the deck, I feel like you just need to cast it when you have these good windows.
Yeah, I think this is just too good of a spot. I mean, besides, like, the amount of pressure you'll be putting on him, and it's just one more card. What's one more card?
It's not better than Obsidian, I'll tell you that much.
No. This is about to be the BBE. The biggest beating ever.
Well, maybe not. I don't know. He's looking at that Abrupt Decay.
This is like one of those Ben Rubin type of situations where you just gotta slide that card to the back, hide that card
Hide it
from yourself.
You cannot be trusted with this level of responsibility right now.
Absolutely. Cannot resist the Siren Song. Abrupt Decay. It's gonna play a control game. Scavenging Ooze gets in there.
Gonna presumably remove the Desecration Demon. That's gonna be an extra point of damage.
And because of the land he played the previous turn, he does not have the mana to play another Ooze. Although it's possibly just wouldn't want to, respecting Vile Blight some more.
There's a Duress off the top.
Thank goodness it's not a Lifebane zombie.
Yeah, I mean, this sequence is much better if you knew that he was drawing Duress.
Huh. I guess that's why he's up there.
And I'm in here hanging out with you.
Yep.
Now a Desecration Demon is follow-up.
He knows the coast is clear, but it's interesting because by tapping out, he once again gives Ryan the for sure 4 from Obsidian.
Gotta land the Ghost Council here. And here's Obsidian.
Yep. I think, well, it is important to phase it out. It is even more important to phase it back in.
Yeah. They're both really important, but one is much more important than the other.
Yeah. So, Obsidian, going on vacation.
I believe that was a Hero's Downfall at the top for Joshua.
I think it might even just been a land. I think he's had the Hero's Downfall for a bit, which is part of the, part of the reason why he's just not even stressing this Obsidian. He's just chill.
I'd be stressing it. This is a lot of damage.
Yeah, but that's because you'd have like a Burning Tree Emissary in play.
Well, I would have had a bunch of other stuff going on too.
I don't know. It's possible. Obsidian comes back.
I had like a Foundry Street Denizen probably.
Playing around the possibility of drawing Golgari Charm.
Yep.
I like it.
Best to take no chances in that spot.
I like it.
You know you're going to do it, just do it.
Yep.
Vile Blight, the draw for Ryan.
Not an A+ card in this spot. Both Abrupt Decay and Vile Blight struggling against Desecration Demon.
And now with the ability to get the Scavenging Ooze up to a 4/4, I suspect we're going to see Ryan deploy his second Scavenging Ooze this turn.
Could not agree more.
Vile Blight is no longer a consideration. And in theory, that was the one thing preventing Ryan from deploying the second Ooze in the first place.
Yes, sir, Bob. Any chance of a defensive Desecration Demon?
No, he's still got life to play with, and he does need to close the game out with these creatures.
Makes sense. Besides, he's got a great merchant in his hand, which will buy him some time and really punish Ryan if he's taking big 6-point chunks out of his life.
Yep.
Man,
Okay.
so by playing the Scavenging Ooze first, he could get blown out by Vile Blight.
Yeah, this was not good sequencing.
Nah,
Probably
maybe this is taunting. This is like this is.
I know you don't have it, so whatever, man.
This is that the Bruce Lee, like, come here, come at me, bro.
Hero's Downfall at the top for Joshua. Excellent draw here.
Definitely. I mean, Gerhart's board isn't the best, but it's pretty dangerous when Bauer's at 5, and so being able to get the 4/4 off the table, pretty big game.
Now the question is, does he want to do that this turn or play his Grey Merchant?
Definitely a good question. I think you lead with the demon first just to see what Gerhart does. Presumably nothing, but either way.
Yeah, might as well have the information. So now Josh has decided if he wants to even attack with the demon.
Under pressure.
I mean, there is an argument for taking a pretty conservative approach here.
Definitely.
If Hero's Downfall in hand, you might be able to stabilize this pretty easy if you don't just get randomly punked out of the game here.
It is real hard to have all the right answers for the Black Deck's creatures. They hit from so many different sides. I mean, Pack Rat, you want the Bile Blight. Underworld Connections, you want the Abrupt Decay. Desecration Demon, neither of those deals with.
So see how Ryan wants to proceed here. Bile Blight in hand along with Abrupt Decay. And if Josh does not block well against this Scavenging Ooze, he could be looking at losing his demon.
Yeah, I mean, if he's just like, you know, Ryan's like raise, Josh calls.
So,
Does he call? He's deciding whether or not to call, because this is kind of a maniac attack if you don't really have it.
Yeah. And Josh's life total is low enough that the odds that he's just bluffing here have to be extremely low. I mean,
But he could also take into consideration that he would know that. So maybe this is free, because it's just inconceivable that anybody would be that maniacal.
I mean, he's even separating his lands right now to cast Bile Blight.
I love it. This is real magic. This is that Wild West, you know. There's like a whistle, the two of them, you know, like the tumbleweed blowing through the center of town. It's high noon. This, my friend, is the showdown.
Yep. Put him to the test.
Besides, it is a hell of a thing when you have to be the guy who just runs no attacks, no blocks with the Desecration Demon. And he takes it.
Right on the chin.
That's a tough attack to take. This is a good play, though. It's a real good play.
Draws, after deploying connections, draws with it. There's a Caryatid.
AKA demon food at some point.
Maybe right now. With 2 oozes in play, it's pretty tempting just to sack things when you can. Looks like we're announcing a demon trigger.
Yeah, now that he has the Underworld Connections, he wants to preserve his life total. He also even has realistic chances of actually feeding the demon, you know, appeasing the demon long enough to close out the business with the deli. Hero's Downfall and the Big Ooze, a very important play. This means Josh has a lot more breathing room. The problem, of course, that Underworld Connections is going to really start to add up.
And all these trades are so good for Gerhart because Ooze is in play. So he gets to gain life and grow his Ooze the whole way through.
The problem, of course, being that he has to keep feeding the demon. Like, once you start feeding the demon, it's real hard to stop.
Draws with connections. It's a Thoughtseize.
Not a totally great draw right here.
Consults the graveyard.
He's got access to Abrupt Decay, Bile Blight, Thoughtseize, a Scryland. How big is that ooze going to get up to?
Well, it's a 3/3 with what's in the graveyard right now.
4/4, right? There's an ooze and a Caryatid?
Oh, correct. Yeah. So that Grey Merchant can't even profitably lock at this point. And if it chumps, then that's another creature in the graveyard.
And he does block. 2 creatures get eaten. both players on the appease the creature with counters plan, effectively giving a +1/+1 counter to the enemy each turn.
Temple of Plenty post-combat. Looks at another connections.
Wow, it would be real freaking bold to keep a connections here.
Yeah, I think you gotta dump this one.
That's aggressive.
Because how does the game play in such a way that the second connection
I
is?
mean, you got to feed the demon. Like, you could do the math and determine that a second connections makes it more likely that you could actually keep feeding the demon. I don't know. I mean, this is some serious math type of stuff. I don't think it's necessarily crazy. It's aggressive. Like, we're talking like jumping off a bridge. It's not even over water, just jumping off a bridge onto a crowd of people, assuming that they're going to catch you. Like, it's very aggressive.
So he decides against, plays a Thoughtseize, reveals a swamp.
The 2-life tax, because he just needs to know.
So this demon now is lethal next turn. There's a Gray Merchant in the graveyard. Underworld Connections, the draw.
This is tough because that ooze is lethal, but this demon would be lethal the next turn if he could just not die to the ooze. What's kind of sick is that Bile Blight, once again, in a position to kill the demon because the ooze is going to grow up to a 5/5.
Josh now contemplating what he wants to do with this demon, but
Doesn't even want to see the card from connections yet.
well, maybe that's the bluff here. Maybe he just attacks first because Ryan just has to guess. This is gutsy magic. Oh, I like this a lot.
What in the...
I like this a lot.
You can't, I guess you can't. This way it's protected from like, wait, from what? I mean, this is like literally just slow rolling just to be like a showman. This is that, you know, like literally you're in the center of the circus. It's like
Because what
ringleader.
if Joshua goes, I'll draw a card, now I'll announce an attack. You might be like, okay, maybe he drew a removal spell.
But you could do that either way. Like the normal play would be to just do that either way.
Well, you might get him to induce to sacrifice the ooze and not use your removal spell. I don't know. I mean, Joshua could just be acting a little hasty here.
I think this is just like he's gonna. I mean, what he needs to do is just flip it.
Paul Ritzel is a big fan of attacking, drawing a card, not even looking at it and attacking. We're in the same spot right now.
Absolutely. Somebody's got to get Paul Ritzel on the phone about this one because this is like.
Oh my God, he's just passing. I mean, I guess it starts off the connections. Oh my God.
The psychological warfare pays off.
Oh my God.
Okay, well that was impressive.
I mean, Gray Merchant now is a win.
Gray Merchant is a win.
Gray Merchant would not have been a win if he just drew a card.
This is unreal. Okay. Huh.
Here we go.
Question is there any justice in the world? Now, he didn't just flip it and slam it, which I think means he deserves to not, you know, to have what he has now. Because if you got to just windmill that.
All right, he's going to sack to the demon.
Which means he no longer has the ability to gain life from the ooze.
Oh, wow. That was almost something incredible. There's Lifebane Zombie. And this is going to be a couple removal spells, and that's just going to be game over.
Wow, what a match.
Wow.
Well played by both players. Crazy. All right. I guess at this point, you might as well, right? Like,
yeah.
In for a penny, in for a pound.
And
Josh
there it
extends
is.
the hand. Well played. Gave himself fought for an extra turn. Gerhart now realizing, of course, that he gave him an extra draw that he didn't need to, but he did manage to pull it out with his junk mid-range deck, 2-1. What a crazy match. Marathon match with a lot of back and forth, a lot of craziness, a lot of good games.
Josh Bauer there. I'm not sure if, I can't say with any certainty if that line was on purpose or not.
It was brilliant.
But there was no other way for him to win that game except for what he did. He gave himself an extra draw, which is